Welcome to my stop, collaborate, and listen session. And this is very informal. I'm just going to walk you through some tools, talk about some things. So if you do have questions, drop them in the chat, unmute yourself, ask away. I just wanted to talk about some collaboration features that I think will help you work with your students while we're working on distance learning, because I know that this is a new arena for so many of us to use these collaboration tools in class is one challenge. To do it remotely is a different challenge, and we want to try and engage our learners as much as possible. So we know that Google Suite has a wealth of tools, and personally is my favorite way to collaborate with students, because you can use all of the collaboration is real time in Google Docs, in slides, as well as in Sheets if you want to use Sheets as well. You can share files very easily in Google Drive with inside your network, or if you need to share outside your network, you can do that. So I want to kind of highlight some ways that you can use Google Docs, or just to create some interactive activities. For you guys that have participated in PD with me, you know that I use Google Docs and I share out that document with one document, and everyone's participating in one document. Doing that allows me to have a record of one. First of all, I would suggest that if you want to make sure you're getting attendance taken for your students, that you might want to create a Google Doc and drop that into your Google Classroom and say, hey guys, sign in. This is our attendance for our live session. Just checking in. You could also use the Google Doc as a way for students to ask questions. So the advantage of using a Google Doc, so I'm going to do a new document here. So I'm just going to create a new Google Doc, and we're going to say this is my sign-in form. And what's great about this is that I can go in and see who's engaged in my document by going to File, and I can go to Version History. Now I'm the first person that's worked on this document, but I can see the version history, and notice it's going to populate over here who's engaged in this document. That's a great record of who's actually working on things. So I had a couple of teachers say, well, I don't know if they've actually looked at my assignment. I don't know if they've actually looked at this and participated. You can use that version history option in a Google document to monitor what your students are doing. So I can easily share this out by adding students in it. I want to make sure that that pencil is on so everybody can edit. You could also change a resource to just comment only, which is something that you might push out an article that you want them to read, and then you want them to add comments to it. So the commenting feature would allow the kids to read the article and put comments. I can easily share this, and I'm going to go into a Google Classroom real quick. So when I go into my Google Classroom, and if I wanted to push this out as my sign-in form for an activity for Bunch Middle School, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say classwork. And just as a reference, I have this whole section on distance learning resources for all of my schools. But I'm just going to add this here, and I'm going to say this is a new assignment. And I'm going to say this is our sign-in. So if you're doing a live session, you could add this document in there for them to sign in. And you could also make it be something that they can post questions on. So I'm going to choose Add, go to Google Drive, and it's going to pull up the most recent document that I've worked on and add it. When you add any Google document, by default, it says they can view it. Well, we obviously don't want them just to look at it. We want them to be able to edit it. If I choose edit it, that means there's one copy of this form. Everybody's actively using it. If they're making a copy for each student, that means they would each have their own document. We don't want to do that. So that this is a collaborative document, we're going to say students can edit this file, and then I'm going to create this assignment. That means that everybody in my Google Classroom can go into that one document, add their name, sign in, post any questions. And here's the thing. I know that some of us worry because at middle and high school students, whether or not they're going to be appropriate in your Google document. But again, that goes back to that I can go to that version history and see any changes that have been made. So I went here to File, Version History, and I can see my version history, and I can see anyone that is engaged in that document and made any changes. So that means if you do have a knucklehead that decides to go in and delete somebody, you can go in and check that. So that's one way to use Google Documents to collaborate with your students. I think it's a great way for that check-in piece, because I know you can use the question feature in Google Classroom, but I love that. But you have to go back to Google Classroom to see it. And this way you have it as a document and you have it as a resource if you need to for your evaluators to say, hey, this is what we were doing and this is how we were doing it. Any questions on how to use a collaborative doc with your students? Now, the reason I love Google Docs is because their collaboration is real time. So just as easily as I could share that Google document, I can also do the same thing with a Google presentation. I can choose to share it. I can add students, or I can add this as one that I want students to work on and add comments to. So one of the things I'm going to do here is I can also go to that View Version History. So that version history is available in Docs, Slides. So again, that way you can go back and see what they're doing. The other thing I like about using Google Slides is that I do a lot with Discovery Education and the Spotlight on Strategies. So the Spotlight on Strategies are quick, easy to use strategies you can work on with your students. So I've created templates that you can share with your students if you like. And I'm going to drop this link in the chat window. There we go. So this is my page that has these templates. So if you'll notice on the templates page, I've got all of these. I've got them as Google Docs. I also have as Google Slides. And I even have a couple of Google Drawings. So for example, this is one of my personal favorites. This is 6-word story. 6-word story is a great way to do a pulse check on your students prior to a lesson or at the end of a lesson. So I'm going to go here, and you can grab this template and add it to your Google Drive. You can modify it and use it as you see fit. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say use this template, and it's going to add it to my drive. So now I'm into my template. So what's great about using a template like this is 6-word story requires that students prior to encountering content or at the end of encountering a lesson or new content that they have to write 6 words. And that's a challenge for our students because they have to be very, very precise in their word choice. But it's a great way to summarize what they've learned. So this is a basic template in Google Slides where each kid would grab a slide. Instead of you having to open up 30 different slide presentations, it's in one slide deck. So you push this out as an assignment that everyone can edit. And what's great is as a teacher, I can go down here to this grid view. When I go to grid view, I can see all of my students' responses. Caveat here, they can see each other's responses as well. So one of 2 tips. If you don't really worry about that because this is just a check-in, each student grabs their own slide. You might say, keep in mind, you always have number 1 because you're going in alphabetical order. You might say all your student last name A, you get 1, 2, and so forth. So you might already have a numbered system in your classroom. You could also make it a free-for-all, which we know how that can go. But this is also teaching them digital citizenship and appropriate use of resources in the classroom. So I can go in and check. And again, I can go back to that version history to see who's engaged in a document. A tip, though, is if you want them to, before they paste it into this Google document where everybody can see it in the slide deck, you might tell them, open up your own Google Doc, use it as your practice, use it as your draft, write your 6-word story. And then when you're done, set a timer and say, all right, everybody go ahead and fill that out. That way they're not seeing it live and not getting ideas from other students. That would be another way you could do that. Any questions on how you can use Google Slides in a collaborative way, pushing out a template like this? You can do this very easily. I have several different templates. I just added last night 4 corners. I've got 2 versions of that. This one right here has the emojis where you can have them grab an emoji and put it in one of the corners based on what you're talking about. I've got PMI. I've got a digital twist on 321, SOS, tweet, tabletop texting. This is a great collaboration piece where you put your students in pairs and they have to work collaboratively to complete a conversation. You can also have them work on the 3 truths and a lie. Let's take a look at this one. This is a great one to use at the end of a session. After they've encountered new content, you're going to have them craft 3 truthful statements and 1 that is false. When they do that, each of them has a slide, but now you're going to have them partner up, and I'm going to have my partner label with this is a drag and drop. I'm going to go and drag my truth and lie and label which each of those statements is. Any questions on ways to use Google Slides to create collaborative documents? So I want to take a look at some other tools besides the Google Slides and Google Docs. One of my other favorite Google tools is called Jamboard. So I can choose plus and open up. This is a whiteboard tool. So this is really good. I've got some of my math teachers that are using this as a way to model and have students walk through the process of completing a math problem. So if I go here, I have the ability to, once I created a jam, I can share this jam. Right now, I'm the only one in my jam, but I can go here and I can choose to share it. And what you're going to do, since this is not built into Google Classroom, you're going to grab the link so that everybody can participate in it, or you could share it out to maybe your team leaders so you don't have 30 kids on a jam. Your students can also start a jam. Notice I can grab this link, make sure everyone can edit, and I can grab this accessible link. And that means that I can go in here and I can add other people. So I can choose this and I can say anyone with the link, anyone with Atlanta Public Schools can access this. So when I do that, I can post it in my Google Classroom and students can participate in my jam. So I can choose to change the background. I've got graphing options, colored options, or just leave it blank. Now, the advantage of this is I can bring this up. It works really well on an iPad or a touch device. So for my middle school teachers that have that APS Digital Bridge device that has the stylus and touch capability, this is great because you can flip it over into tablet mode and I can annotate on top of the screen. If you've got an iPad, you can also pull this up and it works pretty real time. Now, this is not quite as seamless as docs and slides, but it's pretty good. I mean, within a couple of seconds, you're going to see any changes. So I can go to pen mode and I've got different styles pens. I can choose my color. I can annotate. I can write on this. I can also, there's my eraser tool. Here's my select tool so I can move things around. I can add in Post-it notes. So this is really cool. I can go to color coordinating things. So you can have this be a check-in option for students as well. Kind of a pulse check. Red means I need some help. Blue means I'm all good. Green's all good. Blue is like I'm sailing, I'm on my own. And maybe yellow is a caution to check in. So you could definitely use this as a check-in tool. Okay, students can add their names. They could color coordinate it. You could watch where they are and how they're checking in. I can also upload images. I'm just going to throw my little popcorn one up here. So if you have a graph or an image or a text that you want to bring up here, you can easily bring up any image that you want and have them annotate on it as well. So I'm thinking social studies. You can bring a map in and have the students collaborate on labeling parts of a map. You could have it be a science concept and they need to label elements of that as well. It could be a text for ELA or social studies and they need to annotate over it. The other cool thing is, because this was built as a presentation tool by Google, is I have a laser pointer tool as well. So you can bring in elements and use this to highlight what you're talking about as you're explaining concepts to your students. The other thing that's cool about this is that I can add pages. So I can just keep going and going and going, or I can create new jams. Up here at the upper left-hand corner, I can select this and I'm going to give this a jam. This is my demo jam. Anytime I want to undo any changes, I can click that undo button. Now this open on Jamboard, that is because again, this was created for Google to use. They actually have a physical Jamboard, kind of like an interactive whiteboard that has the capability to work with this app, but then they made the app public. So this is Jamboard, and I think it's a really cool tool that you can use to collaborate with your students live and have them be able to work problems, model it for you, and for you to show them as well. Any questions on Jamboard? I know Miss Park is on here. I know she's thinking, hey, this might be great for my math students, right? So let's take a look at some other tools that I've included. So I got Jamboard. One of my other personal tools that I like is Wakelet. So Wakelet, I did a whole session on Wakelet, and we're not going to do a deep dive on that right now. But Wakelet is a content collection tool that you and your students can use to gather resources. But what's also great is you can add collaborators. So I'm just going to dive in and show you how you can add a collaborator. So your students can work in teams to collaborate on resources that they need to gather for a research project. So if you are choosing to have them do their research on their own, and again, if you're interested in learning about how to use Wakelet, I'm going to suggest I have a tutorial all about Wakelet. So this is my collection here. Notice I can add contributors. So that means now it's become not just me gathering resources and sharing them out, that I can add collaborators. So I can copy that link. So if you want to open it up and have other students all add to a collaborative Wakelet, maybe it's articles they've read related to what you're studying, or maybe you're going to have them do a little research on the COVID-19 for current events and you want them to pull in articles that they're reading. I can copy this code. I can copy this link. I can also share via email, inviting people by typing their email in. But to you, the easiest way to do is to copy this link and add it into Google Classroom. By doing that, anyone that has that link can join your Wakelet and add to it. So that's a great resource, is to be able to have a collaborative Wakelet gathering in resources, especially if your students are creating presentations. Questions on Wakelet? If you do want to do a deep dive and learn a little bit more about Wakelet, on my Tech Tips YouTube channel, you'll notice I have a Wakelet, how to use Wakelet to create differentiated lessons. This is a deep dive into Wakelet, 21-minute video. You can watch that self-paced to get familiar with Wakelet if you're not familiar with it. Next up, I had a teacher that asked me about the ability to have feedback in writing, which you can easily do with Google Classroom and using Google Docs. But if you want it to be a more polished experience, and it walks you through how to get started with it. But what's great is your students can upload their documents and get peer feedback in a more professional environment. This is more streamlined. I love Google Docs for feedback and comments, but it can get lost in this long stream. So you might want to check out Now Comment if you have your students creating some virtual writing and you want them to share some feedback. So if they're working on, say, for example, Macbeth, and they're needing to annotate and comment on the work, you can do that in a collaborative environment with Now Comment. Next up, all of the collaborative features that are inside of Office 365. Obviously, you can collaborate on your Word documents. You can definitely collaborate in OneNote, and we're going to talk about that. You can collaborate using PowerPoint as well. So if we look at OneNote, the best way for your students and for you to access OneNote is to go through my backpack. Again, shoot them in the, watch in the chat. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. If not, unmute yourself, ask away, very informal. So I'm going to go down here to my Office 365. If you're like me and you have a ton of different resources, I'm going to search Office 365. There we go. When I go into Office 365, you'll notice that you have access to all of your apps. This is how you get to your main dashboard. There's OneNote and there's Class Notebook. So Class Notebook is an ideal way for you to push out resources to your students. I can create a notebook here, add or remove students, add or remove teachers, manage notebooks. So to create a notebook, very super easy. I'm just going to call this one Collab Demo. Click Next. You get a collaboration space, which means every student can participate equally in there and post comments and questions. So as much as I love Google Classroom, this is a great way to have a one-stop shop for questions and answers in a collaborative space. You also have a content library where you can push out resources for your students. So right now, expectations of your classroom hours while we're doing distance learning, how your grading protocols are going to go, how they're to participate in online classes, all of that can go into your content library. And then the student notebook section, everybody has their own section, but only the student and the teacher can see it. So I'm going to click Next. So for right now, so now the caveat to this is you do need to manually enter your students in this. So you might want to use this for all of your students, or you might really want to use this for your students that need that extra support at home, and you want to be able to differentiate for your diverse learners. But I've added Miss McConnell, so you're going to add in each of your students, pull up your students from Infinite Campus, drop in their names very easily. I had a teacher that did this. It took about 5 to 7 minutes per class if you do every single student. So I know it's a heavy lift now, but in the long run, it's going to be beneficial for you to have a tool that you can actively collaborate with your students. So now I'm going to go Next. These are the default sections that are in there. You've got handouts, class notes, homework, quizzes. You can differentiate this, change this however you want. If I don't want any of those, I want to rename them, I can make my own sections. I'm going to go Next. And just like that, scroll down here to the bottom and create my notebook. The advantage of having your OneNote class notebook is that you can collaborate with your students and you can push out resources in that collaboration section. So I'm going to go back here to my home, manage my notebooks. Okay, I just got an email that I created my notebook. Notice I've got lots of them right here. So I'm going to go down here and I should have my collab demo. There we go. This is the important link. If I grab this link right here, I can copy this and put it in my Google Classroom and my students will see it. Okay, that way you don't have to email them all. You can post it in there. So I can also make any additions to any sections as we have this be week 1, week 2, week 3, and do that. But I'm going to go into Open Notebook. It's going to give you all about OneNote and Class Notebook. This is default in every notebook that you create. Your collaboration space, this is why we set this up, is that now you've got a one-stop shop place where students can add, and you can add in a collaborative environment. So if I go to my collaboration space, and it gives you the how to use collaboration space, but under collaboration space, I can say I want to add a page, and I can add any information. So this could be week 1 resources and questions. Your students might have multiple questions. I like Google Classroom a lot. Do training. I use it for my PD support for you guys. But the thing is that when people ask questions, they get attached to different assignments, or they get attached to, one particular assignment, and it's hard to find where those questions are. But now that I've created this collaborative space, I can post my questions and comments in OneNote. And maybe one student has a question and another student might see it and might be able to provide support even before you can respond as well. So I would definitely suggest OneNote as a collaboration option for you to support your students. Questions on OneNote. And I'm sharing a bunch of different tips and tools. It's not a big deep dive. If you have questions, do let me know. So my other thing that I love that Microsoft has is Sway. How many of you guys have heard of Sway? To me, Sway is PowerPoint on steroids. So if we go to sway.com, which is available, just go to sway.com, or we know we can go back to our one-stop shop. Sway is right here. So Sway is a presentation tool that you can create and collaborate with your students. So you could create a Sway and have them add to it. You could have your students work in pairs to create a presentation on the topics that you're working on. So if I want to, I'm going to open up one that I created right here. Okay. And I added in some elements. There's my EdTech for engagement. I can go here to share. This is the important part. I can add in all different elements. Okay. That's what it looks like. I've got some text. I'm going to say share. And it gives me this copy link right here. Sure, anyone can access it. Get this link, get the embed code, okay? I can print it, I can export it. Okay, I'm going to sign in right now because it doesn't recognize that I'm here, so it wasn't giving me all of my options. Okay, this is the back end of it, okay? So here's my title pictures, title of your sway, add some information on it. If I want to, again, share it, there's those share options. Specific people and groups, those in your organization, anyone with the link. This is the important piece. I can invite people once I start it, whether or not I want them to edit it. So you could have your students work in teams and you have the lead person create the sway and then they're responsible for sharing out their link to their sway so they can work collaboratively on that sway presentation. So this is a great way that maybe at the end of the week you want to do a check-in on what you've learned and you put them in pairs, small groups, try, 3-4 students at a time can work on that sway. Again, you're going to make sure that edit, copy that link. They can share it through Google Classroom with their classmates. They can email it. They can paste it in a Google Doc and share it out that way or in a Microsoft Doc. Okay. Any questions on using sway? Again, it's like PowerPoint on steroids, but it's a great way for students to work, for them to work collaboratively on an engaging presentation. Questions so far? And I ran through a lot. I wanted to spend, a good time showing you some tools and then allow some time for some questions for you guys to ask. Maybe I showed something. You're like, hey, wait, how did you do that again? Or you wanted some ideas for how you could use collaboration with your students. I'm checking the chat here. No questions so far. What was the tool where you show your math work? That was Jamboard. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, or my goal is, did it spark any ideas for you on something you can do with your students? That was the goal. Were there any ideas that you're like, oh yeah, that'd be great. I can do this for my check-in with my students. I love it. You can post a math problem and have students submit their work on the Jamboard. I love it. That's a great idea. That way you can see how they worked it out, especially since they've got those digital bridge devices with the touch capability. Flip it over, use it as a tablet, and it's interactive. That's great. Any other thoughts of how you can use some of the tools we talked about and any resources? Okay, great. The OneNote collaboration. Excellent, Ms. Jordan. I think that's going to be a great way for you to have a one-stop shop with your students. So definitely take a look at that. Now, here's the caveat. I've shared several tools, several ways. You might want to pick one to start out with each week. Don't try and do all this at one time and overload your students. You're going to pick maybe 1 or 2 tools and be like, hey, we're going to try this. And here's the thing. Since we're in a new environment here, this is the unknown world for us with this virtual learning. Tell the students, we're trying new tools. We're going to see how it goes. And if it's an epic fail, we'll try something else. But just be honest that you guys are just trying new ways to engage them in their learning. Do a pulse check. How's it helping? Is it working? Do they like it? Do they not like it? Well, thank you guys very much for your time. I did want to point out that you can check out some tutorials on my YouTube channel, so that hopefully you can pull out at least 1 or 2 of these ideas of ways that you can use collaboration to engage your students while we're distance learning.